March of 2022, I heard the case of a young man down in Florida who accidentally fell out of a roller coaster ride. And it was very sad because he told his friends, like, hey, if anything happens to me and I die, let my mom know I love her. But on the other side of the coin, the team of engineers, and I was keeping up with you guys being hired to come out and investigate. And I saw you in some of the videos doing some investigation work as an engineer as well. So there's engineers that not only do design work, but also investigative work in terms of figuring out what are the contributing factors, even in fatal accidents such as this. So I'm really excited to learn from you today, figure out how you got into this career field, what are some of the cases that you've worked on. What's up, guys? I'm Andrew Baines. Welcome back to the Custom Journeys channel. If you're not familiar with this YouTube channel, it's all about helping you all have a successful career in STEM and introducing you all to some amazing Black and Latino STEM professionals. I'm very excited to be joined today by Dr. Rose Figueroa. Did I do it right?
Yes.
Y'all don't understand how much pressure I put on myself to say that right. But very excited to be joined by her. She has a PhD in industrial engineering from Michigan.
Yeah, University of Michigan.
University of Michigan. Also works as a forensics engineer for RIMCUS. If you didn't know, accidents occur, whether it's vehicle accidents, roller coaster accidents. A lot of times when those situations occur, engineers are hired, such as Dr. Rose, and their job is to come out and figure out what are the contributing factors that cause these accidents. So I'm really excited to learn from you today, figure out how you got into this career field, what are some of the cases that you've worked on and things like that. So thanks for joining me today. How you doing?
Good, pretty good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Cool. And the name, I did get on the name that time,
You
right?
did,
All right,
yes.
look at me. I'm ready to roll my R's and stuff like that. So you're well distinguished, well accomplished. I know you're heavily involved with SHIP. You do a lot of D&I work as well, which I didn't mention earlier, but belong in. You do a lot of speaking engagements and things of that nature. So I'm really interested as well to kind of learn more about what corporations' thoughts and approaches are to DEI and belonging as well, and how we can kind of improve and move the needle there in the DEI space. So to kick it off, I kind of mentioned that I think the young man's name was Tyree Sampson, who unfortunately passed away at the accident on the roller coaster. And I know human factors, forensics engineering, it's a lot broad term. People may not be familiar with it. Can you kind of start off by like telling us a little bit about what human factors is and like what's some of the role that you do as like a forensics engineer?
Sure. I mean, overall, human factors is the scientific field of research, that where you're looking at the capabilities and limitations of the person and how the interactions, within the person and an environment, tools, objects, etc. I mean, we joke like the simple could be human factors and ergonomics is interchangeable. So we're talking about ergonomic chairs or whatever. That's usually what people think. But think about it as any system and how you're fitting that system to the person. Now, when we're looking at in terms of forensics and accident investigation, it's more about now you're not designing, right? So it's not fitting. It's more about analyzing those interactions, analyzing, the capabilities and limitations, and see if something, what had an effect that could have, potentially increase the likelihood of that type of accident.
And so what kind of work do you guys primarily work on? Is it like vehicle accidents? Is it like OSHA related accidents? Like somebody's in a warehouse, like slipped and fell and stuff like that? Like, or is it best everything underneath that umbrella?
Short answer is all of it. Human factors can be, it's a broad space domain where you can have psychologists, people from the psychology background, like you mentioned in my case, from engineering side, the education, and some others, right? So it depends on the training and education of the individual. But overall, yes. So it could be related to safety, it could be related to slip, trips, and falls, and it could be operators or talking about when you're talking about vehicle accidents, so perception, reaction, detection, so analyzing attention and things like that. And again, how you're explaining that with science and data, peer-reviewed studies and all that, how that may have had an effect, or how, like, what are the different, when we do this type of analysis, think about it as like a big puzzle, right? And you're trying to get all the information that you need such that you can come up with the opinions and have the basis for them. So it's within all those realm, like that realm big umbrella that you just mentioned. Yeah.
Gotcha. No, that's very interesting. And so I don't know how much you can talk about it, but I know you guys were well covered in the news. I think you may have even had like your UM hat on, like on the scene at the situation down in Florida where the accident happened. So I don't know like how many details you can go into it, but when I was reading about the story and following the case of the roller coaster accident with Tyree, I noticed one of the things that kind of stuck out to me is that one of the causes or the contributors to the accident was somebody had adjusted the harness that was used to kind of strap people in. So like, let's say there was like a seat where it's designed specifically for a certain demographic, meaning like, hey, this is for individuals no taller than 5'10", no bigger than like 200 pounds, just for an example. But it seemed like somebody adjusted the seat or the harness so that bigger people could fit in there and just kind of move on with the ride. Like, were there any findings or anything interesting from that study that you guys took away that you're able to share with the public or anything like that?
Some of the things that I can share, I guess, even going back in my experience, right? Like was one, like you mentioned, especially I live in Florida when I'm at home. So a lot of my friends were, it was all over the, local news too.
Mhm.
So we get to the point where I was in a random lunch or brunch and all my friends were talking about it. Like they're, they engineering and forensics hat, which for me was pretty interesting to see. The layperson, right? Like what was available out there. So one of the, I'm not talking necessarily about the findings of what
Yeah.
happened there, but something interesting was there was information that was extremely, widely public, that it was just went all out, like I think even a copy of a manual and things like that.
Mhm.
And it was interesting to see the layperson trying to say like, oh, I know what happened. This is what happened, and that's why, and that's it. And here I am, the person that was one of the scientists that were analyzing that. And I was just like, well, I have 20 questions that I still don't know. Like, and that's great that you have the answer. And I had more information than you, so for me, that was kind of interesting to see that perspective. But with that said, yeah, you're right. There were things that were out there, like, you mentioned the weight limit. It was widely public, also the manual, and knowing that some of the seats were adjusted. Now it's more about understanding like who did what, when would that happen, like how they get to that point. And of course, at the end of the day, we know that the accident happened, right? Like it
Yeah.
was in the news, it was in the video. So it's just seeing where, if you go back to the explanation of human factors, we're talking about that big system where that, there's that linkage in a system where there's a balance, right? Like no accidents happen. So in this case, something broke, some linkage broke, that the
Mhm.
incident occurred. So yeah, the findings, I guess, would be it was related, like you were talking about, like who did what, where that information may have been lost, like who knew what. So because a lot of people that were out there were blaming, for example, were the operators specifically, or like certain entities, but the reality is like it is more complicated, right? Otherwise we would have not been engaged to
Yeah.
begin with. um so yeah, like I guess that's where we're thinking and talking about that.
I think it's a real interesting like space that you guys are in. What are some of the things that like some of the variables that you all consider when doing your investigation? Like, and not specific to this case that we were talking to earlier, but just in general. Like, is there anything? Like, I'll give you an example. Once upon a time, I had an interview with a forensics engineering firm. I think they were based in Cincinnati, but they had a space here in Houston. And the way they described it to me is that, like, hey, let's say there's an accident on the highway. They would give me a call. I would have to show up at the accident scene, take a bunch of photos of like the car crashes, skid marks on the road. So I guess those are like some of the variables that
Mhm.
go into like looking at or investigating a car accident. What are like in some of those variables even beyond that you may consider like when trying to figure out what factors contributed to an accident?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
So, and the human factors answer is it depends. But it depends, because it depends on the case, on the
Yeah.
context. I can talk first, I guess, generally. Let's say we're not talking about a human factors expert. Let's talk about like a forensic analyst, scientist, or whatnot. Um, one of the things that you need to consider is the scope, right? Like as an expert, you're there for a niche, a specific area. So you need to understand that, like, what is your scope and what are the variables, what are the things that you need to like fill in the blanks for your analysis that can guide you on what you would need. With that said, like you mentioned, if it's a vehicle accident, of course, taking all the photos that are needed, all the measurements that would be needed, all the points and key data that you will need to, do you need to recreate? Do you need to animate this? Do you need to recreate demonstratives? Do you need to understand the timing? And that will guide you to say it. So of course, overall, I can tell you, like, of course, the overall photos, there's certain things, like, there's also a lot of this is in litigation, actually.
Mm.
So you have the way more data that is also coming from the litigation aspect, like deposition statements that at least for the human factors, right, is pretty important, because I need to understand what people said, what people thought, what if there's discrepancies in testimony and why they may have happened. And all those things would need to be considered. And so ideally, like, sometimes it depends on the timeline on the case. Sometimes you're engaged where they don't have anything. They just said, this just happened. This
Yeah.
is like what we call the rapid response, right? Like, we would just go and try to gather as much as we can from the scene and document as much as we can.
Mhm.
And sometimes human factors experts, as any attorneys are seeing, like, we get very late and then we're just like, wait, it would have been great if I had X, Y, and Z that somebody else documented, or if you
Mm.
engaged me earlier, I could have make sure that was in there. But I mentioned that because it might depend. You may have already some constraints and limitations based on the scope that they tell you, and or the timeline and what is available at the end of the day. So sometimes you have to be, thorough and or creative, and, like, do you need exemplars, which would be like a sister vehicle, let's say, that is similar,
Mm.
because you need to document something specific, an obstruction, the change, like things like that, the damage. And in other cases, like a surrogate, like another person, similar height, similar weight for certain reason. Um, so this is where you're basically using your scientist and engineering hat, and you're designing basically an experiment,
Yeah.
and going from there and try to, gather all the data that you need so that you can get your opinions and have enough basis to, like, support those.
So when you guys are like recreating things, I think it would be really cool, like if y'all actually did like a physical like reenactment or test. And I'm assuming y'all primarily prioritize like computer simulations, right? Because those are a lot cheaper to do. You can kind of like recreate things a lot easier and faster with like computer simulations. But do y'all ever, is that the case? And then also, do y'all ever do like physical, like real life, like crash tests or whatever like that case may be?
Yes,
Okay.
all. So that's an interesting thought, that you're saying that you would think that it's sometimes it may be cheaper to do the visualizations and demonstratives and animations.
Yeah.
Sometimes that actually adds a lot to the case in terms of the budget. And sometimes actually the opposite, where if you do the physical, like, demonstratives and getting the right vehicles, the right people, like, like setting the space, in terms of budget, you would be amazed that it actually could be the opposite. It could be cheaper
Interesting.
for the client, but it's not necessarily what is cheaper or not. Sometimes they do worry about the budget. Sometimes it's more about what do we need? Like, what would be helpful? Do we need that animation, that demonstrative for trial, for
Hmm.
potential arbitration or whatever? Like, we're here as a service, so that may be needed. Um, I can tell you, I have rented racetracks to
Oh,
that I have brought vehicles to create some demonstratives, like assess potential, situations, and certain distances, certain placements. I have done. I've closed a highway in Atlanta
what?
at night. Yeah, so you get to do, be creative again, going back, and what may be needed for the case. It depends, but that's where, like, yes, like, I get to, I have done actual, setups
Yeah.
and testing, or I have to get an exemplar of the, like, the vehicle, or the, like, if it's micromobility, like the bike or the scooter for certain reason, and
Okay.
to create demonstratives or to do testing, or to, like, test speeds. It all depends on the case, and especially the human factors, right? Because we're going back that the system is important, and the
Mhm.
context, so the specific, the case specifics are important as well.
Gotcha. Man, y'all are kinda like the I don't know, y'all are like the, like, real scientists, like, kinda like the Bill Nye of, like, the engineering world where you get to go out there and, like, do all these not Bill Nye, what's the one? Oh, man, Mythbusters. Like, that's really what y'all remind me of, like, the ones that get to go out there and, like, do these cool things, shutting down highways, racetracks, crashing things, computer simulations, you name it. So that's pretty interesting. What's been like is there a case that's really stuck out that you are able to share, like, that you think people may find interesting? I know that's kind of a hard question because everything is, like everything you do is tied up with, like, litigation at some point, so it's, like, limited, but is there
Yeah.
anything that would be public knowledge that you could share?
And yeah, I think there's a few, or at least in general, like the perspective. So that's it. That's also like a cool or interesting question, right? Because it depends how you ask. Like sometimes I get asked, like, what is the coolest case? And I'm like, well, it depends. What are you talking about? The biggest magnitude, or so
Mhm.
like I have done like a whole explosion in a building, and that may be cool, quote unquote, for some people because it's the magnitude of it, like a
Yeah.
class action type thing. I've done others where uh I had to do a lot of hands-on work and playing, and I say playing, but it's like a testing and instrumenting. Um, I have done, for example, like I told you, it could be a bike or an e-scooter or something, right?
Mhm.
Like you have to maybe be creative and do the instrumentation and testing or simulation afterwards. Do 3D modeling. I do a lot of visualizations and 3D modeling. I leverage my education on like human modeling from my PhD, to build some of that niche and help the clients not not only what I would need from the human factors um to answer, but also like maybe what could be helpful for them in terms of visuals, that can, at the end of the day, I'm here as a scientist that can digest that perhaps complex um literature, articles, right, books and all that book of knowledge, and then I am here to try to explain it in simple terms, or like something extremely complex. I had one where I had to do a lot of the modeling to kind of like you have the 2D view, like a CCTV camera, right? And then I was able to then create the whole 3D environment and basically bring in the viewer from that 2D perspective to that 3D environment to show that like the movements or whatever happened or didn't happen, but based on science and physics and whatnot. I've done cases that we brought the whole thing to virtual reality.
Interesting.
Yeah, so we basically put people on the VR headset, and it's just like, and can can you walk through this and tell me what you see, or like without guiding them, of course, and see what they come up. Which that actually ends up being some of them, after the cases were done, they became some publications. So I do have some
Mm.
papers that was work that started maybe sparked from a case, and we found that perhaps there's not much out there from the peer reviewed study, so that we can now help. We're still scientists, right? So to help and increase the book of knowledge on that area.
So a couple quick follow-up questions for you. Is there a particular so I know you get hired by a company, a client that they need you to investigate something, figure out what are the contributing factors. Eventually, through litigation, they determine who was at fault from the judicial standpoint. Is there like a specific industry that majority of your clients come from? Like, a majority of them car manufacturers or insurance companies, or it just kind of varies, or what?
It varies. It varies where you're located. It
Okay.
varies the type of engineering or scientific, area that you're in.
Hmm.
It also varies in your, like, if you within that field you have a specific domain. In my case, I started more as a generalist, and then I found that my niche was more of those, like, if you think about the common denominator, the animations, visualizations, and things like that. Uh, but yeah, no, and I've done a lot of trucking cases. I've done
Mm.
a lot of like I said, I end up getting more of the complex because of my I'm kind of in the middle, that I do know from my biomechanics background from my PhD. So I know a lot of human movement and kinematics that perhaps another human factors expert that comes from my psychology background, it doesn't have that, in-depth knowledge on that portion, the more physical ergo or
Yeah.
biomechanics. So I tend to, I guess, levitate if we're talking about those, those that may involve like bicycles, micromobility, and pedestrians, I have done a lot of like nighttime or like low visibility conspicuity cases.
Gotcha.
But then, from the safety side, I do a lot of like mailing facilities, or like you were talking about earlier, like maybe like a OSHA thing, lockout tagout, things that may involve like human factors / safety. So yeah, it just depends on the person. That's why I wanted to give you that caveat, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because I may be a generalist, but it would all depend on your location. It would all depend on your field, and even the people that you're working with. Because to some extent, you're starting to get cases as you're growing. Let's say you're coming at early stages,
Hmm.
and you're starting to get cases and helping like a principal like me, or you will start getting whatever they're getting at whatever that was their niche. But you can always build up on that and build your own niche. Like, as soon as I started, I got a PhD, and then I right away kept getting certifications and other things. Like, I'm an OSHA qualified operator and safety trainer for boom lifts and forklifts. So
Mm,
I can get, those type of cases. I identify that could be something that I could help and I
yeah,
could be good at. So that would be an example. So like, you can always, whatever you like, you can start building your own path that way,
yeah.
as well. And similar thing, like I was debating if I was gonna go and get the PE, or if I was gonna get the CHFP, that it's like board certified human factors professional. And given that most of my things are human factors, not necessarily that core biomechanics mechanism of injury, I decided to go on that, the CHFP route. I may get the PE later, or like, but you see, like you
Yeah.
can start. You're always learning, and you can always keep getting. Like, I just got a certification for like a specific turbometer for slip testing.
Gotcha.
So, as you start getting cases, you start getting your hands dirty, let's say, you can see what you like, you can see what you're good at, um, and you can start building the.
Since you kind of talked about it, like some of your background and the credentials that you have and the journey that you took to get here, what sparked your interest when I don't know when it happened, but what sparked your interest where you're like, okay, I want to go the human factors route and really be a forensics engineer and figure out what's the contributing factors to these cases.
So that's a very complex question. Like, well, because in Puerto Rico, in Mayagüez, I remember I was in one of these material sciences classes, and this amazing professor, he actually shared that he was helping on a case, and this was many years ago. Jesus. But if I recall, I think what the accident that he was explaining was a mailbox that fell on somebody, like a leg or somebody, and then she
Mm,
was injured. And he was a material sciences, like mechanical engineer. He was helping, in that case. That kind of like put it there, like, oh, I knew I kind of wanted to be a consultant. I kind of already knew that I wanted to go to grad school, get a PhD, and I knew I didn't want to be a professor. um, so not the academia route, more of the consulting. But you could always go consulting, like business consulting, still with a PhD, right? Like or the technical route. So that kind of sparked my interest in that side to some extent. Then when I was a PhD student, I actually did an internship with forensics human factors firm, and that kind of solidified that could be a way of doing it. Even then, I still explore the business strategy route, the business consulting, and then I ended up deciding to go on the technical side. But then the human factors, though, it, don't quote me, because I think this year the curriculum just changed.
okay.
It after many years that but I took like 170 credits or 75 credits. It was a 5-year program, and we took a lot of mechanical engineering,
Mm,
robotics. I get a lot of different areas and labs. But we took a bunch of ergonomics and like occupational biomechanics and human factors classes, and those professors kind of sparked my interest in that area. And I had the chance to go to University of Michigan. I applied for a summer research opportunity program, so I
okay.
went for the whole summer to do research with a professor in the Center for Ergonomics, which then I ended up going back and working with him. But
Nice.
even just that opportunity, I think it opened a lot of doors for me, because when I then decided to apply um, to grad school, going straight to the PhD programs, I think just by working with him and getting his letter of rec, that actually kind of like elevated a lot my application because I was able, lucky enough that I could choose the school that I wanted to go. I ended up going back to Michigan. I kind of fell in love with Michigan in the summer. Ann Arbor is beautiful in the summer.
Yeah, I told you I lived in Detroit, so I understand the struggle.
Summer is amazing. They
beautiful.
love their summer.
Beautiful cider.
That was the hook.
All of that, yeah.
And then I get there, and all of a sudden, like when I started the PhD, I was like, I'm not gonna get a car. I'm just gonna use the bus. This is like,
oh, you crazy.
Caribeña Islander, like I love the heat. I use a hoodie when it's 80 degrees outside. What was I thinking? But you get a community, you get all the Latinos, and it was pretty good. I had a really good time.
Nice. That's great. That's great. So you kind of figured it out, I guess, from exposure to some of your professors that really kind of talked to you about it, and then the research opportunities you had and all that stuff. So that's great that you got. I think that exposure component is always huge, regardless of like who we talk to that have kind of decided to go the engineering route or wherever they're at in their career. It always kind of starts with like some exposure or somebody that plants that seed and somebody that's like, hey, you should check this out.
Yeah. And like you said, it's pretty important because it's the exposure, but it's so that you're understanding what are the tools and the things that you have out there. Like when I started my undergrad, I was just like, okay, I want to go to grad school. And in my mind, I thought I had to get all these, I had to pay for grad school and get loans and all that. And then, then I realized like some students that were PhD students from Michigan, they went to Puerto Rico, did an info session, and they're like, do you know that you can get straight to a PhD program? That's the first thing. Like, I didn't know that you didn't have to go through a master's. I got my master's along the way, which, by the way, that depends on the department though. Mm-hmm. But you could. But I went straight to a PhD program, full fellow. Like, I didn't have any loan. They basically pay, for my school and my car. But in exchange, you're doing research and you're there working. But like I wish I knew that sooner. At least I got it on time. But when you say that, the exposure, I think is pretty important because a lot of what happens with especially the brown and like Black and brown Latinos, we come from a place, an area, or a school that we're not even exposed to those tools or understanding that that's available for you.
Yeah.
Like even applying to grad schools, they were, I don't know if that exists, but it was like a 1,000 something. There's certain like things that they help you with the application, waiving your application or paying your application for you. And sometimes you don't want to apply because you literally don't have the money.
Yeah.
And then did you know that you can go to, call University of Michigan and say like, hey, I have a, financial hardship, like, can you help me? And they can waive your application fee. So like those are the things like exposure. You sparked that. Like I had to say it because it's pretty important, especially within our communities, to like keep sharing that knowledge.
Yeah. I'm glad you did share that because I know a few people that have kind of got those like application fee waived. That is something like it's a factor you got to think about, especially if you're in high school deciding, hey, I just want to go to college, period. Like think about how heavily dependent you are on your parents. It's like most high school kids, if they don't have a job. If they do have a job, it's like minimum wage kind of deal. So it's like whatever your parents are willing to pay for in terms of college applications, that's kind of what you're limited to. So I'm glad you mentioned that because there are rules, but then there's also exceptions. And so like, yeah, the rule is you have to pay an application fee, but there are exceptions and there's opportunities and programs that can help people that are in certain situations. So it's all about being exposed and knowing what opportunities are out there and what's available. And so you kind of hit on human factors, what you do as a forensics engineer, how you got into it, or what was the spark, the catalyst for you. What are some of the things that people need, whether it's like degrees or certifications, for those who hear your story, hear the kind of work that you're doing, and they're interested? Like, do they need a bachelor's in mechanical engineering? Like, what's the background? What's the degree? All that stuff that they need.
For human factors specifically?
Yes.
So there's a couple of things that you can do. In undergrad, there's always student groups. There's a lot of the Human Factors and Ergonomic Society. There's a lot of student chapters that you can start getting involved. Another way that you could do it is actually, seeing if you can be a research assistant. You see if your school has that department. Sometimes would be in the School of Information, could be something related to that. Any like UX, it's, part of the ergonomics, human factors, the human. So you could go that route in terms of if you want to do research, because you may want to do like what I do, that is the accident investigation. Research can help you already get on that mindset, independent thinking and studying. If it's just the in terms of like the field, right? Like it cannot be, doesn't have to be forensics, designing
Mhm.
and things like that. Like I said, like just exposing research assistants or just like getting in the student chapter and getting to know people, go to a conference and meet the professionals. The other way is like grad school, of course. Like there's a lot of masters and PhDs that are very much now specific in human factors. And like I said, it would vary depending on the school. Some may be home unit in psychology department. Some
Okay.
may be, you may have some in kinesiology, mechanical engineering. That would be more of the biomechanics that, you can get into that, and biosciences. So at the end of the day, you need to do a little bit of research, right? Because you need to look where in the school that you are going, um, that can be, that can be helpful.
Yeah.
And as you are starting to build, now let's say that now you go into the point that you already did the masters, you already did these things. There are other things that you can keep going, like get board certified. You can start as an associate level and then build up, your portfolio and your work years, and then you can apply and you'll take the exams, like similar in this the P, in the sense like you need the work product, you need the exam and
Mhm.
whatnot. And yeah, I'm happy to help. Like if anybody that is already maybe in the other portion where they're now know about human factors and might want to get certified, I guess I can help because I'm part of the board
Nice.
that certifies us.
Nice.
So I can even connect you and see how you can build your portfolio and test and get there.
Okay. Nice. No, I appreciate that. I know you travel a lot for your current role. Is that something that a lot of people can expect if they do go the forensics engineering route, or is it kind of specific to your role that you're in currently?
Um, That depends. No, but it does in the sense of like, let me give you a real example, right? Like if you're coming on the human factors and you're coming more of the entry level and you're in a supporting role, what I found is that when I was in that position, I was traveling or at least going to inspections. Let's not even talk about travel yet, but get out of the office
Mhm.
way less than my peers that were assisting like the biomechanics team or reconstructionist team and whatnot. The reason I found, it's that in their case, you can have the principals and the retained testifier that they may not need to be present because they just need the numbers or just doing the calculations, right? So they just need somebody to go and document, just somebody to go and scan, somebody to go and take the photos and etc. And they can just do it from the desk. And then they're just more traveling. Depending on the cases, they do go to inspections. I'm not saying they don't, but you see more of the support team doing that part. For human factors was the other side. I started seeing that, the attorneys, clients, or when you're doing the inspection, you want to be able to, because we're talking about perception, we're talking about attention, we're talking about how did it look like, what are the effects on the environment, for example. So, like in that case, you tend to have that they prefer the person that is actually going to end up being giving the opinions and testifying, that I also have to be able to say, yes, I saw it, I was there, I touched it, etc. So that's why I said it depends, because it depends
Yeah.
on on the type of engineering, the type of scientific field that you're doing it. As you progress in the career, you expect that, like I said, you may be traveling more because you're testifying, because and then include the inspections and whatnot. But for human factors, for sure, I would think that you expect that you're traveling more because the
Okay.
more cases you're getting, like I told you, like at the beginning, I was not doing that many inspections for the person that I was supporting. But as I started getting my own cases and now I'm going there and I have to go and do the inspections myself. Um, so that's why, the travel basically ramped up on my side. And I would expect that is just at this point, hopefully staying the same and not going like more than that. Um, but you never know.
Gotcha. Any just general advice that you have for maybe a recent college grad who's thinking about human factors, like about how to be successful in this career? And part of the reason I asked that is because I paid attention to your LinkedIn profile. It seems like you kind of fast tracked your career growth and everything like that. So I think it would be very valuable for somebody starting their career or just taking those early steps and kind of like using you as the benchmark for like how they their career could potentially go. Do you have like any general advice for how to progress their career at a quick rate and be successful in their career?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's three main things that I would, I guess, recommend overall. There's many, right? But it would boil down to don't be afraid of ask for help, right? Like
Mm,
mentor, but mentor is cute, but it's also the sponsors, stewardships, like people that can help you connect you with the right people, and whatnot. So that would be one in terms of like actually give some seminars on this that is like, have you found your what we call the like um board of directors, your personal board of directors, if you think about
mm,
it. But that mindset already gets you like, I have certain seats that I need to fill, and there's certain areas that I know I want to be better at. You kind of understand, and then that goes to the second point, right? Like the try to understand we're not perfect, right? Like what are your strengths and your limitations that or areas of development for development, and then try to see if there's people that you can get connected, like get advice, get like tangible like when I said, that's why I said mentoring is cute, but it's like that more actionable, right? So that you're trying to get better at that, and that can help you too, because like, you're not only building a relationship with somebody that can be a stewardship later on, but also now you're trying to see how you can be, the third point, be strategic about it. And
mhm.
be strategic, like I told you, it could be the people that you're finding as your mentors, which by the way, they can change and evolve. Like the mentors that I had 10 years ago or that I thought that were in my personal board of directors, they're changing as you progress too. And don't try to find people like just like you actually get out of your comfort zone and try to find people that are not thinking like you, or not like literally look like you and things like that. And when I said strategic, I would add like that is one, of course, the type of people that you're getting in your network, so networking and getting as mentors, stewardships, etc. But also be strategic in, we have limited time, right?
Mm.
So you can, if you like to volunteer, I can give you an example. So like when I was in undergrad, I was more volunteering with like Tau Beta Pi, Alpha, like they're more general, right? Maybe SHIP. Um, as I went to grad school, I did a lot of volunteering, started with like SHIP, but also general, right? And at some point, I was like, I can be in the e-board as a student for SHIP, but I can be in the e-board for the Human Factors Ergonomic Society, which is the group that I'm trying to build my niche and going on that domain.
Mm.
Same with for me was by ISB or ASB at that point, American Society of Biomechanics. Same idea, right? Like I was being strategic and targeted. I want to help in DNI. I can do it also with this type of groups, right? Like I
Yeah,
help ISB develop, like create a task force and then became the diversity committee. I
nice.
you could do DNI, but I still doing like my passion is DNI, but I did it also within the domain, which can help you with the networking, helps you with the connections,
Yeah,
be strategic. You're in the student chapter and you're in the e-board. You already have the perfect excuse to cold call anybody on LinkedIn and say like, hey, do you want to be a speaker for a group? But you can be targeted. You can call 20 people that may not be that relevant to what you want to do, or you can be targeted and some of them are actually somewhat strategic to get the connections going because you're exploring if you want to go on that domain.
yeah, I love it. Like as you're I'm just in my head saying amen, like over and over and over as you're speaking. Cause I mean, I think we really have to look at ourselves as a business. Like, even if you're not an entrepreneur, like you got to think, what is your brand? What is your message? How are you marketing yourself? What skills do you have? Like, what assets do you have? And like, how do you see yourself growing over time? And that board of directors comment is so big, right? Because the people are what make companies great. And
Hmm.
like, you have to have a good leadership team. You have to have a good team around you. So I think everything you said, I love each and every piece of it. And we're actually in some similar circles. I didn't know. So I've gone to ASB, ISB. I know they're going to be, I just helped somebody register for the Japan trip. They're going to be in, ISB is going to be in Japan this year. So interesting. And then I just recently went to my first Alpha conference.
Oh,
So yeah,
nice.
association for people that don't know, Alpha, ALPFA. I got their acronym right.
Yes.
Association for Latino Professionals
Hmm.
for America.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So yeah, a great organization. I had a lot of
Hmm.
fun. It was actually in Philadelphia, and it was all tech focused, fintech focused.
Oh.
So I think like everything you're saying, even the part And this has been something new for me, getting out of your comfort zone, right? So, like, I think it's very important for us to see people in successful positions. Like, it's important for a young Latina to see you, Rose, but I think it's also important for us to step outside of our comfort zone and go into circles that don't look and mirror just us, like, regardless of what your ethnicity is. I think there's a lot of opportunities there to learn from each other. And I think that's all what DE and I and B is all about. And I think there's a lot of value that can be exchanged from all of us, from all different ethnicities and backgrounds. So I resonate with all that. So preach, sister. Another portion of your travel is due to your role in the DEI space and at belonging in particular. Kind of tell us a little bit about what you do currently in the DEI space in terms of speaking or consulting or whatever that you may be working on.
Yes. So you're right. And sometimes I try to match it. Like you were here, right? Like I when you connected with me, and it was just a coincidence that I told you, I actually think I'm gonna be in Houston in a couple weeks.
Yeah, 2 for
And
1.
yeah, coincidence. I tried to do that. So I actually have another engagement that is with a C-suite, like a roundtable on D&I, and that's confidential, but the same, like a Fortune 500, Fortune 100 company, that is headquartered here, or at least they have a big office here. I actually don't know if it's HQ. I don't want to lie about that. With that said, I do some of that travel and some of the engagements. Like I said, it could be a roundtable, it could be workshop facilitation. It could be actually some of the work that I do is partnering with that company to create like those impactful initiatives, like based on data, and trying to gather like not just doing something for doing, like, oh, I want to increase the like retention of Latinos. I'm gonna make lunches for them with tacos. Like,
Oh, God.
yeah, you will be amazed, right? But that's the whole point. It's like, you're spending money there anyway. So like, do you think that is actually impactful? Maybe what you needed in your company was to build a room so that they can connect. And that could be
Yeah.
as simple as that. Like, don't get me wrong, those are powerful, could be, but it depends on what I go back and actually help some companies is like, what are your goals? What are your numbers? Where do you want to get at? What have you been doing? And then trying to see like what initiatives you could do that could be more targeted for that goal. Is it retention? Is it recruiting? Is it recruiting blacks, like mechanical engineers? It could be that specific, right? Or Latinos, or Latinas, like females. So, and the strategies may be the same, or actually may differ, but depending on your targeted like audience or group. So I've done a lot. So I started doing that. It was kind of organically because I started getting, especially the like speaking engagements. It was as Rose. I started just getting cold calls or emails on LinkedIn, like messages on LinkedIn, like, hey, we want you to be a speaker for like Women's a month or something. And then that kind of evolved that I needed more help also because I still have my day job.
Yeah.
And also the branding, right? Like, this is not Rose at Remkes. Rose at Remkes is a forensic consultant. And especially the type of work I do, that I testify and all that, like, I had to also separate. These are different engagements, different work.
Yeah.
So yeah, belonging, like I think one of the not last ones, like maybe last year, big one that I did was actually just I was a panelist, like it was two of us and then the moderator, and it was for Bimbo USA, which is the biggest bakery, one of the biggest like company bakeries in the US, which was kind of cool because, I have Mexican and whenever you go to Mexico, Bimbo was like the biggest, bread company, and you have all these buñuelas and stuff. And then it's like, oh, Bimbo called me to be a speaker. This cool.
It's exciting.
It's like those companies that you as a kid keep looking and they're everywhere and they're famous. I've done, like I said, like most of them may end up being somewhat confidential because I'm like that external consultant that is coming and helping. And some like that one, it was open. I could say it. And that one, I think it was broadcasting. It was Bimbo USA, so it was the whole USA. But I think they did broadcast with Latin America, so we had like 800 people joining or something like that. So it was like there's some big events like that, and I've done, like I said, roundtables.
Okay.
And the keynote. like for the Women's Month or the like Hispanic Heritage Month. And some are as simple as like sharing my career path. Some they ask for specific like a workshop on, let's say that like the personal board of directors that we're talking about.
Hmm.
So strategies to get that going, on mentoring. They already have mentoring programs and they're trying to strengthen them. So they get me as a speaker just simply so like, you know, they're not listening from their own, they're also listening from others and experts. I get to do some on biases where I actually use my human factors hat from, all the biases and things like that. So I get to use my human fact accessibility. I've done a lot lately on accessibility
Okay.
for people with disabilities. And I actually for HFES I co-founded the disability and chronic illness affinity group. And it's just some things like that. Like I also find where I know I can be helpful even from my education, like my PhD, like human factors, and how can I apply that even in D&I space. And I, of course, you can see the humans,
Yeah, the
the
intersection there.
intersection there, and I've been able to leverage that um to be like that, not the authority, but you know what I mean. Like I actually have that expertise where I'm data driven, explain in simple terms. Let's like help you facilitate something and get it going.
Nice. That's great. I love that. I love all the work you're doing. And when you said the taco comment, I'm thinking like Cinco de Mayo at the end of the week, and I'm hoping that somebody has a better idea than just tacos for some kind of DEI focused event. But anyway, what are some of like the best practices that you've seen or that you've kind of discussed or recommended with some of the clients or corporations that you've kind of been in contact with, or just companies in general that you know of that like you're like, okay, they're doing it the right way? Like, if you're serious about DEI and belonging, this is what you need to be doing.
Collect data. The data. There's and it can evolve, right? Like, and that because that actually drives like if you need to change certain initiatives or programs. So data is important. So there's certain companies that that they're doing it the right way, and they have been even make it public. They're actually making it public every year. They're like diversity. These are our goals. They're tangible. This is how we're tracking them, and this is how they're like if we're getting there or not. And I give that example. I think uh, I had an engagement with like Moody's, that where I was a speaker for them, and so I have kept like kind of close connection with them, and I've seen them evolve and the reports. Like that's an example of like one. It's not like it's kudos. They're doing a good job. So there's that. It's not that I'm promoting them. I actually don't know much in their actual technical stuff because it's completely different of what I do. But there's companies that are out there collecting data, understanding. Like there's some company. Let's go on the other side. Like you were saying, we have a lot of females, we have a lot of Latinos, and then all of a sudden, I don't know if you've seen any of those memes or those things where it's like white capped heavy. Have you
Mm.
heard of that?
No, I haven't seen that one yet.
White caps, the mountains.
Oh, okay.
So it's like
Oh, okay. I
yes.
got you. I got you.
So, sometimes because they're not even collecting data or they're not collecting it the right way, they come in and say, "Oh, but like our numbers are great. Look how many Latinos we have. Look how many like black people we have. Like look at many like or whatever group because
Yeah.
there are other groups, right? Like I'm focusing more on the Latinas
Hmm.
in this conversation, but and that when you see they're not actually collecting it or reporting it the right way, because if now you do it per segment, you're realizing like, oh yeah, you have them all in the administrative positions, you have them all in the assistant positions. You're not seeing them going up the chain. You see, and that's where the white
Yeah.
capped
Yeah. That's a good.
organization comes in.
I've seen those memes where it's like what companies mean by DEI, and it's like they show like a bunch of
The white.
emojis. Like, yeah, and it's like black face, brown face, white, black face, brown face, and then like as you go up in the org chart, it's like less and less diverse. So I that came back to me as you were talking. I think definitely like data, right? If you're not tracking something, you're not going to be able to change it, right?
Hmm.
Like whether it's your finances within your own personal household, whether it's like you're trying to lose weight or get in shape, like if you're not tracking what you're eating, how much you're eating, how much you weigh, like what's the
Yeah.
likelihood of you getting in better shape? So I think that's a great point.
How do you know the change if
Yeah,
it's
and
actual change or impactful or whatever?
exactly.
And I mean, you're spending money at the end of the day. Like if you know, it's a business. You're talking about like budget and investments.
Hmm.
Uh, Anything that you're putting some money and investing, you would want to know how much like are you moving the needle, and is it the right needle, right? Like is it
Yeah.
what you were targeting to in the first place? So the other thing that I've seen that have been really like good, and I've seen more and more of these workshops and seminars, even for in the HR. Uh, let's say like summits would be the being like equity inclusive and transparency in recruiting,
Hmm.
and like setting up the like how are you recruiting, and do you have any potential bias? Are you in a company where you're recruiting that the person that came in, it was because it was you found them on your circle in LinkedIn, like the circle by default is within like probably people that look closer than you, then like you're not getting out there. Are you waiting? So some companies that have good practices, they even have a specific pool, so they're saying like we're not moving anybody forward until we have this is the nomenclature of the applicants, that like we're now that they're all there, now we're gonna push it forward, and they're very targeted and very black and white. Like some of them are like they have in their systems like we need a female or two females, we need like one is has to be a minority, within for Hispanic or whatever. And of course it depends on the location that you are like like
Yeah.
it should, but it should be somewhat representative at least in just your state, right? Like Texas, Florida, California, you would expect that there's more, for example, Latinos, right?
Hmm.
Than
Hmm.
Wyoming,
Yeah.
and that's fine. Like it's also in the context of the location, but being targeted on that and trying to be the transparency
Hmm.
and the equitable, it takes effort, and some of the bad practices, which is easier to share sometimes, is they say, like I'm moving, yeah, they're going to forward because we don't have time, or because we know timing is a constraint, and that's why I said like sometimes it's effort, or they just say, well, we don't want to showcase that we interviewed 70 people to get just one, because that kind of looks bad that we just got one, and but if you flip it, that actually shows that you were thorough and you consider a big pool. The bigger the pool, the more chances that the more diverse group you consider
Hmm.
to get to that one person. So that's the bad practice and good practice, right? Type thing.
Yeah.
Um, are you being biased on certain, like I'm not getting people because they're from certain company, or the opposite? I'm only gonna get people because they're from this company. Their lateral moves or whatever, right? Like then, do you see the bias there? Like,
Yeah.
and there's certain things that it's funny because sometimes when I explain things and I walk them through and I do a roundtable, then it kind of look like common sense, but it kind of took me to get there, to walk you through, to get you to understand what was the common sense,
Yeah.
which is fine. I mean, um, but like that's where we at in the D&I space.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. 'Cause it does seem like common sense to us who have like we're living this each and every day, and we know where
Hmm.
to find like the diverse talent. But kind of to your point, right? Like a lot of times your circle reflects who you are, right? Like the neighborhood you grew up in. Like chances are your network is heavy Latino, Latina.
Hmm.
Mine is heavy Black, and if I had a Caucasian person here, it'd probably be heavily Caucasian. So it's like that's understandable. So we have our biases, we have our blind spots, and our network obviously looks like our community that we've lived in or worked in majority of our career. So I think being aware of those blind spots, sometimes common sense could not be so common if you don't take the blinders off and realize, okay, oh, like, yeah, that's a good point. Like I should be looking beyond just my alma mater or beyond just
Yeah.
my immediate friend group or whatever the case is. If I need Black engineers, maybe I should look at a HBCU Or if I need Hispanic engineers, maybe I should go to
Be targeted.
HSI.
That
Like,
is a great point. That's another thing that I mentioned. I should be charging now, no, but and for us it's common sense, right? Like I get sometimes that questions like how can we get more Latinos, and then the first questions are like, what organizations are you putting your job posting, and they're
yeah,
and do you know that there's like Nesby if it's engineers, black engineers? Do you know about SHIP? Do you know about Alpha? Do you know, like, where are you posting this that you're saying that there's no Latino pool?
yeah,
Oh, on LinkedIn randomly. Who's posting it? Me. To your point, like, who are your connections?
hmm
Or maybe you don't have that many followers, even your company. So then it's just the people, the same idea, right? So sometimes it's about being targeted. And that's why I said it takes some effort, because you need to, if you're targeted, you need to understand what are the groups that could be impactful, like how you can engage, how you can become a partner, like as a company, right?
hmm
And support those groups, so you get that bigger pool. Like, and don't get me wrong, now we're not coming and saying like you should go to like Shep or Nesby and recruit all the people there.
yeah,
It's just that if you're looking for Latinos, do you know, like, I think, look, like last year, this is a promotion for Shep, you're welcome. No, but last year we went to the conference and Charlotte, and we filled, I think they said we were like, what, like 10,000 Latinos in downtown Charlotte. Like,
that's
that's
what I heard.
insane, engineers.
Yeah,
And I was there and it was insane. Like, everywhere you look, they were all like these bright minds in the STEM field.
hmm
They were all ready to be recruited, on point, review, resumes. I helped them review some resumes and, like, revamp them, and they have portfolios 4.0, like they have had internships, and you're just like, what is this breed? Like,
yeah,
you have the pool. Is that you need to be targeted, the groups that you're looking at.
yeah. That's a great point. And I think we gotta have to make a checklist for folks. Like, if you're saying if you need DEI, you have DEI metrics that you're not meeting. Like, at least start with Nesby, SHIP, Alpha, Blacks in Tech, Latinas in Tech. Like, there's so many. And like, if you haven't,
Techeria for like UX, for example, and Latinos in tech. That's like
yeah,
a group that we're in a Slack, and I think when I joined, they were maybe like 5,000. I think the last time I looked, they were like 15,000.
it's crazy.
There's plenty of places where
Yeah,
you can have a pool, you can be targeted, but how are you doing it? I think lately we were joking off the record with like branding and marketing and
mhm,
whatnot, and it's the same idea. Like, you can, let's say I'm in the recruiting team and I'm posting it myself, that doesn't reach that many people. Why is the company not posting it for you?
mm,
That has more followers, like, and back you up. um oh, because the marketing team has like certain number of posts that they have to do. Well, I mean, this is not marketing, actually, this is actually recruiting. It should be in a separate bucket.
yeah,
And sometimes they do that too, like they mix them all. And because it can be fused, right? Like, it can be watered down
mm,
in instead of being more targeted as well.
yeah. And I mean, message to the companies: don't be afraid to invest in expanding the pipeline. If you feel like, if you truly believe in your heart of hearts that the talent's not there, like, don't be afraid to invest in the pipeline or creating a pipeline, whether it's like going to different colleges or K through 12 and
Hmm.
showing up and being like, hey, how can we, whether it's programming or whatever the case may be. Like, I think that goes a long way as well. So,
Yeah, I've worked with technical national organizations where I've helped them just create more of those partnerships. The same,
yeah,
like what you're talking about. Oh, we need more minorities in this domain, because now we're talking about domain. If it's like a technical organization,
yeah,
and they're like creating programs for HBCUs
mm,
specifically, and connecting with them every time they go the conferences. If it's, I think, for example, Human Factors and Ergonomic Society is going to be in DC. Probably they're actually, because we have been helping with the liaison and reps committee, and they're connecting with HBCUs in there so that we can go and talk
nice.
and showcase what human factors. Like, it's as simple as that, right? Like you said, is invest in the pipeline and volunteer and be more targeted on that.
Yeah. I think that could go a long way because bringing it back full circle back to how we started, like, if you go back to that exposure piece, right? Like, think about it. If you're saying, hey, we only have a limited pool to recruit from, you go show up tomorrow at
Expand the
some
pool.
school, some college, some high school, some middle school, and you talk about what you're doing and invest in the community that way, like that pipeline can quickly expand and you can
Hmm.
raise the next crop or generation, the next Dr. Rose or whoever the case may be. So
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that on there as well. Um, Man, okay, last question I want to ask you. I haven't mentioned it on camera, but off camera, you were telling me a lot about what you were doing to not only progress your career, but to help others and open the door for
Mm.
others and help others, promote others, sponsor others. Like, where does that mindset come from, and what's the importance of that work and why others should do it? I know it's like a big question in one, but I guess let's start with like, where did you get that mindset from in terms of like not being, what's the
Selfish?
yeah, selfish. There's another like PC,
PC.
like scarcity mindset, not having that scarcity mindset where it's like, oh, I got this opportunity, let me hoard it for myself and make sure nobody else gets it. Like, how do you have that mindset in terms of like helping others and opening the door?
You know, let's see, even if you talk about the selfish mindset, it's like after, like when you're lifting people, you're lifting yourself. Either because of the connection, the network, the like actually like a real connection now with somebody and whatnot. Sometimes like the mindset though for me, I think it may have been embedded, I started helping, like I said, like in groups and
Mhm.
whatnot. But I could feel that it got strengthened when I was in grad school, especially seeing how important it was to get for me, the Latino community in Michigan, right? Like it's something like that. And starting there, but then also seeing how you can actually create impact in another person's life. And that is fulfilling. That is actually like beautiful. Like to seeing this person that you maybe have seen them struggle trying to find a job, and you're like, I spend what 2 hours with them trying to mentor and sponsor and connect you with the right people, and you see them grow, and that is fulfilling just to begin with, at least on for me. But I think the mindset started when, like, I think I did share briefly like how I got in that summer research opportunity program that like I applied. I didn't know that that was a thing. That's when I learned, for example, that I can go to a PhD program and probably without paying a cent. I didn't know that, right? And I wish I knew that when I left college, like sorry, I started college, because that may have affected the college I went. I actually picked Puerto Rico because of the like financials, right? Like it was way cheaper, really good program, but way cheaper than going to. I got accepted in a school in the U.S. that I had to probably get loans to pay. Um, and but in my mind, I did that because I was like, I already knew I wanted to do grad school. I'm not gonna get loans now, and I'm also gonna get loans for grad school. And that's an example where like I got in that mindset because it's just the going back home and what I wish I knew, like getting in the like I wish I knew these things. And if I have the resources, I have the time, or even when I don't have the time to share that, I like I just try to be as helpful as I could be when they're like going in that like young Rose that is like, I wish I knew these things. And I feel like if I have the tools and I can help with that, then why not? It was basically how I started getting into that. That mindset kept kind of evolving, and now is not only about the like I wish I knew and helping and lifting the people that are coming behind me. Even the opportunities, like I got into a point where, for example, even bandwidth, like if I get too many people reaching out, and I could just be in the mindset of like, I don't have time, I'll put you in my schedule for later. um and hoard that opportunity, hoard that gig. Instead, what I've been doing lately is building the people that I would trust. Like at the end of the day, you touch this, the branding, right? Like I'm not gonna recommend just anybody. You have to like vet it to some
Mhm.
extent, whatever that means for you, right? Um, but if I know that I may be somebody reached out and looking for an expert or somebody to help, in a webinar panel, and I may not be available, instead of just saying I'm not available, too bad, call me for later. I may be like, well, I'm not available, but actually, I know this person that she could be a really good fit, and Or like when I'm like hosting or creating events, like there's a couple are coming in the pipeline with very big computer companies or things like that. And I am already looking at the, even my network and being like, hey, would you be willing if I list you as a potential speaker for this event, which is going to be like huge next year, Women's Month, things like that, where, you don't need to do that. But if you get into that mindset where it's just as you're lifting yourself, you can lift others, you can share the opportunities. Like I said, you need that baseline. You need to understand, like, for me, is to some extent the branding, right? Like, I cannot recommend just anybody, but I already talked to you. I already know that you can speak onto that, and like get and share that opportunity. Then again, like, why not? Uh, More often than not, then those opportunities come back to you as well, because they already know that you're not only serving if you can, or charging if you can, like there's some
Hmm.
cases that are, but you're also there to like you're helping them as like a bridge and a connector. So I actually like that. I like being that connector and seeing how I can help, and how I know that you're looking for this opportunity, or I see sometimes you don't even know, right? Because when you share things, what happens is that the other person, the listener, may be already thinking like, wait a second. And I guess I'm already in that mindset. And I think I did it today. Like we were talking earlier and we were just sharing other things, but
Yeah.
or like what we're aiming to do. And I'm already like, I actually have the perfect person that you should connect with, and they can help you. Like, why not sharing that? Like, why
Hmm.
why should I hoard that information? Why? Because I want them on my network to help me only.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't help anybody else.
Exactly.
So it's just about like lifting each other, especially within our communities. Like, yeah, I sometimes like talking about biases, right? Like, I know I'm biased and I want to help the Latinas and the minorities, people of color, people with disabilities. I do. Yeah. And I think that is my purpose too. So I help. Don't get me wrong. I am mentor
Yeah.
any other person. You don't have to have like brown skin, right? But I gravitate towards those, or they gravitate towards me.
Hmm.
Of course, that is the whole point. Is that now they see a Latina in STEM with a PhD, known as an expert in the field. Like, they will gravitate because they're seeing themselves now. Uh, and you see where I'm going, right? Like, but even, and that's just the mentoring. But like I said, like just reiterating, or like in other words, just because I lost my thread right now, it was the even the opportunities, right? Like, I even think like I can serve as a connection, as a connector, as a bridge, and I don't need to even hoard those opportunities, if especially if I can't and if I don't have time,
Yeah.
and just connect the right people in the right circumstances too.
No, that's all great advice and feedback. And sometimes I think people get scared, like, hey, if I give this opportunity away, or if I pass up this opportunity, that like it won't come back around, when in actuality it's the exact opposite. Like the very people that you help and open the door for, like those people remember that, and that's special to them. And the law of
Hmm.
reciprocity, or what some people call karma or whatever, like those, the more good you do, the more good I feel like gets sent back your way from people that you've built equity with and that you've helped over time.
Even with clients, because like you said, sometimes you're scared of even sharing clients, sharing a gig, like a speaking engagement.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not gonna be me the keynote. Oh my god, like nobody's gonna do it better than me. No, it's not that, but it's just the when you say, "Hey, I can't," but if you're looking, what are you looking? Why did you call me?
Mm.
Oh, because it may be very specific. I want forensics, this and that. Then okay, maybe I can help you there. But oh no, it's because I'm looking for a female in STEM that trying to share, in leadership role. Me, I'm busy, but I have these three people that I have already like, I know, and I can speak on their work,
Mm.
and I trust that they could do a good job. Would you like me to connect you with them? They see that, the clients, they see that too, and they come back and they ask again, because they know that you're being helpful as well. Like you're thinking, it's a service, right? Like you're giving them a good service at the end of the day.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I wish more people adopted that mindset, that nice, helpful, genuine way of life. That goes a long way. And I think sometimes people, when they think business and money, they think cutthroat, like dog eat dog. I gotta get over on you. But again, like you can go a long way in this world by being nice and helpful and helping opening the doors for others. So I'm glad you've adopted that mindset. Man, I've had a pleasure talking to you. This has been a lot of fun. Like I got a lot of information from you about your career, your who you are, what you're working on, what you're passionate about, what gets you up and excited every single morning about doing the things that you're
My
doing.
dog? No.
So, nah, this has been a pleasure. Man, I want to just kind of give you the floor to like mention anything or promote anything that you got going on. I know you're building belonging. But is there anything else, any kind of like public engagements or corporations or nonprofits or anything like that that we should be on the lookout for?
I mean, I mentioned, right, like there's different groups. It would all depend on the type of STEM field or group that you're targeting. I have a few, speaking engagements like I do for Hispanic Heritage Month. Like we always at Belonging, like the group, we do tailored workshops, which is pretty cool. That it's like, let's have this conversation. Let's see what you're looking for, what you really need, and then I build a workshop on that. So I do like, in Belonging, we do that, and we have a couple, not many, but a couple openings for this year. Given like we were talking earlier, like my schedule has been triple booked most of my weeks. Um, but then in terms of nonprofits and groups, like you said, it all depends. You have to be somewhat passionate about what you're supporting. But I would just say take a look, and there's more likely a group that is supporting what you're passionate about.
Hmm.
And if you are, like I said, if you're believing, like, Nesby, Shep, Alpha, there's plenty of these groups that would always use the support. I would just say reach out. I'm on LinkedIn, you reach out on LinkedIn. Anybody, you need help or you need like a specific engagement or connect with certain folks, I'm happy to help. If I don't respond, try again. May take a few tries. I'm not ignoring you. It may be that I'm traveling and busy, but I do my best. And even, in our group, like now I have people helping at Belonging. So we, that we will respond and we'll help as much as we can.
I appreciate you responding. I find a lot of great guests on LinkedIn that aren't in my immediate network, and I was very grateful that you hopped on a call, even in the midst of like getting ready for a deposition and everything. I think you were in Michigan at the time, so no, I can definitely.
Trial.
I'll
Oh
try.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my God.
yeah. So no, I can definitely attest to like your willingness to help out. So I appreciate that. Man, no, it's been a pleasure, Rose. Um, I was gonna try and pronounce your last name, but it's been too long from the start of the episode to now to where I've already forgot how to do it, and I don't want to have another bad take on this video. But no, it's been a pleasure. Feel free, like you're more than welcome to come back at any time. Like anything you want to promote or anything like that. More than happy to do that. And then for you guys who are watching, I appreciate you staying tuned to this great episode, learning about um, forensics engineering, human factors, all the great work that Rose is doing, and introducing you all to another career opportunity within STEM that you may not have been aware of. So feel free to reach out to myself or Rose if you want to learn
Mhm.
more about some of the work she's doing and how you can get into the field yourself. But stay tuned for next episode next week. And if you haven't yet subscribed, you missing out. Hit the subscribe button below. That's it for this show. I'll see you all next week. Peace.